Hello and welcome to Lesson 7 on the CPM scheduling prerequisites. Alright, so now that we've gone over the PDM diagram, the Gantt chart, the different relationship types, and the forward and the backward paths, it's now time for us to go over the requirements for us to build out a good logical CPM schedule. These steps are not only best practice when it comes to CPM scheduling, but they are critical steps for us to do when we need to validate our schedule to the owner and forecast potential issues down the road when we get into risk situations on our schedule. If we don't follow these guidelines, then we won't be able to do either and we're going to run into issues. So it's best that we go over this topic now and save ourselves the headache of having to go back and fix our schedule later. So let's dive in and get started. First, we'll need to have a well-defined critical path and subcritical paths, which means that we can't have any open-ended relationship ties. To avoid having open-ended relationships, stick with the finish to start relationships, which you will have or use most of the time on your project anyways, and the finish to finish relationship tie when building out your schedule, and avoid the start to start relationship tie. This is the open-ended relationship tie that will cause issues for you if it doesn't have a finish relationship tie attached. Second, we need to make sure that our schedule has a minimal use of constraints. This isn't something that we've covered yet in this course, but essentially a constraint is a restriction that's put on an activity, limiting its ability to move throughout the schedule. Some examples of constraints would be a mandatory start and finish for an activity. This means that no matter what, this activity will start or finish on that date, pinning it to the schedule. At first, this seems like a good idea, but this is something that we don't want to do because now our schedule is more like a punch list than a schedule, and there's no logic driving the schedule anymore. Then if we're delayed, then we really can't even see the impact of the schedule if we have too many constraints. The only constraints that you should be really using on your project is the mandatory start and finish for the beginning and the end of your project to help you calculate your total float. Most of your schedule needs to have straightforward relationships like a train car. That way everything moves together. If one activity moves, then everything moves, impacting the schedule. So there will be times you will need to use constraints, but just make sure that when you do use them, that they're justified. Moving on, this brings me to my third point on lags. Lags between relationships. Honestly, we never really want to use a lag between a relationship. A lag is just an absence of time between activities. There are times in our project we'll have to use lags when we're working because basically during that time there was no work being done, but we don't really want to use them. When this happens, that absence of time really needs to be justified. We should be able to explain everything that's happening on our project. Because when a delay occurs in our project, which they all do, those gaps make it harder to explain when we have to go back and examine things. We also never want to make it look like our project like we could have conducted work when that really wasn't the case. Our schedule is actually, if you look at it, it's actually telling the story of the project. So when we're building out our schedule, it's really important to use a good amount of detail. For example, we shouldn't just have one really long activity representing 4 or 5 activities. We should actually break that activity down so we can really see the work that's going on. And finally, number 4, never use negative lags. This is incorrect logic and will put your work out of sequence and make your work out of sequence work. A successor activity can never start or cannot start or finish before its predecessor. If a successor is currently right now does that, then you'll have to go back and actually change the relationship tie. So just remember that. Don't ever use negative lags. It's incorrect logic. So overall, those are just all the prerequisites that you need to follow in order to build out a good logical CPM schedule. Following these guidelines will not only ensure that your schedule is accepted, but down the road when you're ready to conduct risk analysis on your schedule, it'll be in really great shape for that because you've actually really followed all the scheduling prerequisites. All right, well, that concludes this lesson on the scheduling prerequisites. Please join me in the next course as we dive into Primavera P6 and we get in to start creating schedules there. So thanks. I'll see you guys in the next lesson. For more information on CPM scheduling and Primavera P6 Professional, please visit bmhscheduling.com. Thanks for watching.